Hi, this is Nathan. Welcome to the Wad Fam Chalk Pod.
Oh, hi there. Welcome to the pod. I'm Dylan James Weaver, but most folks around here just call me Dylan. Why don't you get the whole family together and join us for another exciting episode of the Wad Fam Chalk Pod. Hello and welcome to the Wad Fam Chalk Pod. I'm Dylan Weaver.
And I'm Andrew Sabo.
And we are here to talk about the first episode that we are covering in the Pastor George Barclay arc called A Prayer for George Barclay.
Yes, sir. It's the first episode we are covering together. I accidentally covered a prequel on my own.
Yeah, we
Never released.
we made the executive decision, meaning I just made the call to start here when talking about this arc.
Yes, sir.
Was it the wrong call? I don't know. Tweet at me.
I don't think so. I mean, I listened. The episode in question is Our Daily Bread. It's just him losing his job, which is informed in this episode. So, I don't really think it's a big deal.
I mean, it's the thing that sets the ball in motion.
Yeah.
But it's not the meat.
No. And you get a lot of, I didn't realize how much about that you were going to hear about in this episode, so.
Oh, yeah, this episode just recaps that, because the episode in question, Our Daily Bread, aired, over a year before this one.
Yeah. Well, and it was a part of that, themed album.
A concept album, if you will.
Yeah, a concept album. That's the word for it. Dylan's so good with words.
It just, I don't know. I decided to start here, and so we are.
Oh, I'm glad that we did. I to be honest, I prepped for both of them, and this one's much better. So,
yay.
Much more enjoyable to talk about.
This episode first aired April 2nd of 1994. It was written and directed by Mr. Paul McCusker. And, I don't know, the other thing of note is that it's Hal Smith only has 2 episodes after this before he passes.
Wow.
So we get him right at the tail end.
Yeah.
In his role in this episode, and I was very happy to see him. I was like, oh, Hal Smith, I didn't know if it would be you, but it is.
It is. I didn't realize that he passed away so early on. I mean, I realize
we are, this is episode 262.
I mean...
But also, we're only, 6 years into the show.
Yeah, exactly.
It is, yeah, he does leave a strong impression.
Yeah.
And they also, Wit doesn't... they do stuff so that Wit's presence is still felt for a long... there are a lot of episodes between now and when Wit returns.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So, I think that's the thing that we often forget.
Will we ever cover that? Who's to say?
Who knows? Maybe.
I
know one guest really wants us to.
I know that one host really wants us to.
Who could it be? There's so much Odyssey we could cover.
It's true. It's almost like there's 900 episodes or something
weird.
like that. Actually, there's more than that. There's 902 now. They put out 2 new episodes.
They did, but they're also, I think Truth Chronicles don't count as numbers except for Kidsborough.
What? I hated that.
Because Kidsborough aired on the radio, Truth Chronicles never did.
Yep.
So, I think that's 9 additional ones. I feel like there's other, weird fudgings of numbers. There's also, episodes that are clip shows, so should they even count?
No. Well, yes. Well,
Yeah, my point exactly. And
stay tuned for our Patreon exclusive podcast.
And there are episodes that like aired once and have never aired again.
Mm-hmm.
So like do those count towards the total number?
Does the Officer Harley collection count?
Right. And especially considering some of those episodes were remade into other ones, like we covered last fall with the Twilight Zone.
Is that a Hoobler question? Like, that would have to... Is it higher than a writer? Would it be a producer or director? Like, who decides the canon? Like, who...
Well, I mean, I think the fact that they're numbered up to 900 means that, like, they count them at least in... Like, they are episodes that were produced of the show, and they were released at one point. It's just weird talking now about, like, how many total Odyssey episodes there are. Because it's a show that's been going on for over 30 years.
Yeah. We don't know the real number. Anywho,
it's 900.
It's 900. Let's get into the cast, Dylan, because we've got some new characters.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
old characters,
right? So there's not a ton to say here in talking about the cast because once again we're talking about early Odyssey, early enough to where we're not really hiring voice actors. I mean, we may have gone over some of this stuff before. Obviously, we just talked about Hal Smith being Wit in this, towards the end of his career as Wit. We have David Griffin playing Jimmy Barclay, notably 5 years older than when we covered him for our Christmas episode, because both him and Azure Janowski as Donna Barclay, neither of them were ever recast. So they were kids when the show began, and they continued to voice those characters from, I mean, for like a good, 6-7 year period.
Yeah, that's tough. I don't know. I mean, we could talk about Odyssey's decisions as far as, like, what characters they let grow up and what characters they keep frozen in time.
I mean, the answer is, they don't anymore.
Yeah.
It felt like in the early days, they let characters grow. They also had a less established brand at that point, so it made more sense as a business decision of, people aren't invested in Odyssey as much as they're invested in these specific characters.
Yeah.
And so, starting out, you could get away with, hey, we're gonna, keep the same actors on. These are, non-professional actors. These are, people,
children.
Right, children who we pulled in for this and who, but not who have, a resume.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're doing a good job.
They do an excellent job.
I think you can definitely hear, and this episode, I think David Griffin definitely had, the hardest go of it, and they tried to work that into the show of him going through puberty, and they addressed his voice change in episodes and stuff. And I think it's cool that they did that and they made it work. But you can see how time has progressed and Odyssey has a tendency to just write characters off or just kind of drop them as they age.
Yeah.
And or recast them to keep them young, as we've seen in what we were talking about previously with Matthew Parker, where he's been recast 3 times. And for Emily, they just hired an adult to voice her from the get-go. So they're doing, I think in times more recent, Odyssey is handling this way more the way the entertainment industry does. Whereas at this point, they still feel like this weird, kind of scrappy startup.
Yeah.
They are just trying to...
They're making do with what they have.
Yeah.
They don't have the resources or, the expectations to perform a certain way. This is great. And, not to get ahead of ourselves, but I did really enjoy this episode, and I think the kids' voice acting was a big part of why I liked it. So
yeah, no, I think it's
definitely comes across well.
It's authentic. And we have Chuck Bolte as George Barclay, who we've talked about a bunch in the past because George is kind of the one who tends to come up. So yeah, and interestingly, we have Carol Bilger as Mary Barclay. She is she's the 4th actress to voice Mary Barclay.
Wow.
And she is also the final one.
Yeah, that makes sense. That they follow her through the end.
Yeah, but the fact that we are 250 episodes into Odyssey.
And they've had 4 different people.
Is kind of wild. So, like, they had the first episode with the Barclays, like, they had one actress who just did, like, that 2-parter, and then they had another one come on and do, like, the next 5, and then Patty Paris did, you know, I don't know, 12 episodes or something, including the ones that we've covered, The Visitors, and Modesty is the Best Policy. Yeah. She's the actor for those. And then starting with like episode 219, going through
the end of the character arc.
Right, which ends with Pokenberry Christmas, which we'll obviously be covering in this. Like, this is what we're covering here is the finale for the Barclays.
Yeah, yeah.
And so Carol Bilger is the voice during that. She is has the most episodes as Mary Barclay and does a really good job. And I honestly, like, even having just covered The Visitors, I can't really tell. She also, like, is not a character who gets a lot to do.
Unfortunately.
Especially when we were talking about The Visitors. So, like, I don't know that I clock her voice. Her voice isn't particularly distinct, so it's easy for just kind of anybody to slot in. And I think that that's maybe amplified by the fact that they've had 4 different actors play her within, 300 episodes.
300 episodes. Wow. That's a lot of Odyssey. That's so much.
I'm not saying that she's been in 300 episodes.
No, I know.
I'm saying, like, within the first 300 episodes of Odyssey. I mean, they were just cranking episodes out in the early days. Anyways,
do you want to roll the promo?
Yeah. Now that we've gotten through a lot of cast info and just general talking about the context of Odyssey, I think it's promo time.
It's promo time.
You never know what to expect when Jimmy and Donna Barclay take matters into their own hands. Coming up on Adventures in Odyssey, Jimmy and Donna decide to pray to get their father a job, with some amazing results. Will God give George a bigger and better job, or does he have something completely different in mind? Find out next time on Adventures in Odyssey.
It's like a basic across-the-board promo, but I miss when basic across-the-board promos had, like, character to them.
Oh, yeah, and fun music like that.
Yes, that's exactly it. The music and just this announcer guy who is, like...
This time on Odyssey.
Like, I have a lot of appreciation for Chris, but her being the host and the announcer in tough. Current Odyssey is just, like, a bit of a bummer, because I feel like we don't get as much variation.
Yeah, and also her voice has aged a decent bit, and so it's kind of like, I don't know, every time I hear her talk, it reminds me of, like, the fact that the show's been around for a really long time,
and that she has hosted the entire time.
Yeah.
Which is
bonkers.
So wild.
I mean, if she makes it to 1,000 episodes, they gotta write her off. Like, there is
off the host?
Yeah.
I mean, she is kind of a character in the early episodes.
Yeah, no, I think that they can give her a one-off episode and set up her grandson as the new host or whatever. I don't know what they need to do, but...
Just make Connie the host. Yeah.
Exactly. Easy.
Andrew wants Connie for everything.
I want Connie for everything, and I want Katie Buchanan to take over the show.
Kathy. You just
Katie
combine Katie Lee and Kathy Buchanan into one person.
Not such a bad idea, folks. Let's get on that.
Yeah.
Save some money.
Great. This episode has, like, starts off with the intro that I associate with Odyssey.
Yes.
Which is...
Yes.
Which is Chris going, and now Adventures in Odyssey. Mm-hmm. Whit doing his intro, and then we get a clip show teaser. This is, I mean, when we were talking about Novacom, this is what we got. This is
Odyssey.
Right. Early Odyssey has weird skits that they then, that aren't really available on the Adventures in Odyssey Club, which is a bit of a bummer.
Yeah, they definitely, I mean...
They have not aged well at all, but they're kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, if they put out the Harley collection, I feel like they should give us an album of all the weird skits at the beginning of episodes.
That would be fun. I would enjoy that. And then obviously, New Odyssey, is just like the theme, and that's
like
and you get Wit talking over it sometimes and whatever. And obviously, like, as we're talking about like certain sagas, like they cut the theme for time and whatever, but this feels like Odyssey.
Well, yeah, and it feels like Odyssey, and it's a return to these classic, like, iconic Odyssey characters.
Right.
Like, the Barclay family
It's the first family of Odyssey.
Yeah. Very royal in feeling, honestly.
Well, yeah, they're, for a long time, the only real family in Odyssey.
Yeah,
we have a lot of kids. And we have adults, and we have, like, Connie and Eugene. But, like, as far as what has become so much of a staple of Odyssey in its later days, and especially for a show made by a company who has family in their name.
And focusing on it.
That's true. It's funny that, like, there was basically just one for a while.
Yeah.
But they're such a good one.
Well, they really make it count, because, I mean, this episode is arguably, like, the Barclays at their finest as far as I'm concerned. Like, the family dynamic here is so good.
Yeah. You can tell that they have been performing these parts for
a while.
Years.
Yeah.
Like, there is a level of comfort, but it also is just, like, the writers know what they're doing, and like we talked about it when we talked about The Visitors, of just like it feels like a real family dynamic.
Yeah.
And it's so good. And honestly, like, I think Odyssey tends to do the family dynamic really well.
Oh,
like, I don't think of ones where I'm like, oh, that really didn't work, but they don't. Yeah, it's not always that they have. Yeah, I don't know. The sibling dynamic especially, I just love.
Yeah,
and we talked about that with, you know, I mean, we talked about it with Marvin and Tamika. We talk about it with the
Mori and Suzu.
No, bad sibling dynamic. That one doesn't make any sense. No, the one I was going to point to was Matthew and Olivia when we talked about that at the beginning of Rydell Saga.
What a time that was.
Yeah.
When we knew
had
so much
hope.
Yeah.
So this episode starts out to set kind of the scene. George does not have a job and has just kind of been picking up odd jobs around Odyssey. He was laid off because his company downscaled due to some hard times.
Yeah, moved to Hope, Arkansas.
Hope.
Yeah, I don't know. Weird trivia from the episode that I accidentally prepped for.
But they talk in this one about him getting that same job back.
Yep.
So like they didn't actually move. This is the weird. Yeah. This is the weirdness.
We don't know this
of Our Daily Bread, and the reason we kind of didn't include it is because it's not. Yeah.
Great.
I don't know. It's the way I feel about Our Daily Bread is they were like, oh, let's do something with George. It would be interesting to cover like him losing his job. But when they did that, they had no plan for where that could go.
Yeah.
And this episode is, we didn't talk about the fact it's written and directed by Paul McCusker.
Hey.
It's McCusker stepping in and going like, okay, well, like the direction we should go with this is like, have an arc of George being called into ministry. Like that's something something we've never covered.
Church kids too, though. Like I feel like
it's really good. Well, and like I think we've talked about it in passing before, but like the fact that there's not really a pastor character or like church centric storylines in Odyssey, despite it being a show about faith, is just like interesting. And so it's like, okay, like we're going for it now. And so they write in the complete guide and in the official guide quite a bit about like this, because it is such like a pivotal arc in the show.
Yeah.
And so at this point in time, Focus had this ministry dedicated to helping pastors and their families. And so they were able to pull stuff from that ministry to fuel this storyline, but also inform that ministry by the research they were doing for this storyline. It's
That's
just
so
an
cool.
interesting thing where like early in Odyssey, like we have this clear alignment of like Focus and Odyssey in a way that feels good.
Mm-hmm. No,
and then it feels like over time, especially when we're talking about like the big sagas, that is completely abandoned. And then like the times where it happens again, like Truth Chronicles and maybe whatever's going on now, rubs me the wrong way. I think because like Focus has become this political behemoth that I just don't align myself with in any way.
Yeah, no, it's
but
really
at this point,
tough.
I appreciate the way those two things are playing together.
Yeah, this is post Blackguard, correct?
This is pre-Blackguard.
Pre-Blackguard,
correct? Because Blackguard is post Hal Smith's death.
Yes, you are correct.
The other thing that like McCusker writes in the Complete Guide, which like I really appreciate, is him talking about like they hadn't done anything following like George losing his job, and they wanted to come up with something, and they were like, okay, we're gonna send him into ministry, but this means that we had to do a lot of research in order to make this feel real. And I just like I appreciate that acknowledgement of like
we had to make this feel real, and that meant by looking at stuff like how it actually is.
Right, like, and obviously with the other like branches of their ministry and being able to like tie that in, and like they're in a unique position to get to talk to people who are pastors and pastor families in a way that like a Hollywood producer isn't gonna get to.
Yeah, no, they definitely, and that probably obviously translated into so much of what we liked about this episode. Like, I mean, we'll get into it, but just how much they talk about change, and how difficult change is. Like, yeah, that's... Going into ministry is an enormous change. And, you know, the only nice thing about Daily Bread that I got from covering it was just kind of the concept of our daily bread, and the idea that there are circumstances in which God just... You put yourself in a position where God is the only one providing for you at all times. And ministry is often the situation in which that happens.
Right.
And that's a scary thing.
A lot of that over this arc.
Yeah. It's a very scary thing, and it's a very scary set of circumstances for especially children to navigate, and adults as well. I mean, I even liked... it wasn't in this episode where him losing his job was such a big deal for him. Like when your dad loses your job,
like this pride aspect.
Yeah, like this identity piece is gone, and you get...
I mean, that's true of anybody losing a job that they've like invested in for a long time.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that I was so surprised was to hear the mom explaining that to the children in the previous episode. And I was like, okay, I get it. Like, this is, Focus talking to the kids that are listening, which is really cool. But the way that they went about it, I was like, wow. Good on you. Like, you really actually took a good angle and was, like, very empathetic and understanding as far as, like, this is hard for both parties, and it's requiring a lot of sacrifice and a lot of change, and the solution is that there really isn't a good solution, and the answer is, it's not easy for anybody.
Well, and we talked about this when we talked about the Kelly episodes with Arthur, but I love the degree to which they are letting these, like they're letting the parents talk to the children and be honest, or even when we were talking about, like, Aubrey and Ben back in, like, early days of Novacom. Like, there's so much power to them being like, yeah, we can have our, like, the adults are not going to, like, put their children on a pedestal, but they're going to talk to them like human beings, and I don't feel like that's a thing we get in media often. It's a thing that I experience in my own life.
Yeah,
But it's not, like, I don't think it's often portrayed well.
In secular media, especially for children are often used as comedic relief. And it's really, really hard because you don't get as much of those, like, actual complexities. You might get the, roll music at the end of the episode. No, this is why this happened, blah, blah, blah. But, like, as far as this whole arc is concerned, I mean, this is pretty honest and raw and complex. Like, there isn't any sitcom tropes in their dynamic.
And it lets the kids and the parents exist in the same world.
Exactly.
Which is the other thing that, like, you do in television is just like, okay, we're going to give the parents this arc and the kids this arc, and they're, occasionally going to cross paths and be like, hey, weird that you're doing this.
Funny that you'd be doing the thing that you were last episode.
Anyways, George is helping Whit build a shed.
Yes.
At Whit's End, assumedly. He also reveals...
Kidsborough canon, perhaps?
Yeah, maybe this is the pre-Kidsborough. He also, in like a great callback / foreshadow, George mentions that Whit mentions that George helped paint Emma Douglas's garage.
Oh,
which is
the
garage that was painted by the Israelites in the book I have, and then that they later go and talk to her. In
Blackguard stuff.
Yeah, in the Blackguard Chronicles, when Jason's trying to reform the Israelites, they go and talk to Emma Douglas. And so it's just, or actually maybe Jack goes and talks to Emma Douglas. Regardless,
Emma Douglas.
I love that Emma Douglas and her garage being painted is just like this constant thing within Odyssey.
It's a motif.
Right.
What does this mean?
And so like they're referencing something in a book that was written a few years previous, and then it will come up again in like their massive like
villain arc.
Yeah. It's just fun.
Oh, it's so great. And the lemonade, I love it when Odyssey has liquids in cups because the ice sound that they have sounds so refreshing every time. I'm like, gosh darn it, I want some lemonade right now.
Yeah, we can have a nice cup of peppermint lemonade after recording.
Ooh, popsicle kid throwback.
Yeah, we're just tying it into everything. This episode is somehow everything we have covered.
Everything. All 900 episodes of the Wad Fam Chocolate.
2021, and we are it's all coming together.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Who knew that this would be what united it? So he's been searching for a job for a while, with nothing happening. Mm-hmm. And I like it talks about him like going to the unemployment office and like working through this stuff, which it also comes up in our daily bread. But like, I like the realness of grappling with that.
Oh, it's very real. And the thing that I found interesting is I'm pretty sure, like, with the invention of, like, Indeed and ZipRecruiter and stuff like that, not a sponsor, but, tweet at me. But, like, with the invention of that, like, a lot of the unemployment stuff has kind of been gotten away with. Like, I know that social work definitely interacts with it, and the unemployment office is still very real.
Right.
But
it feels like at this point, it's, like, a necessary element.
Yeah,
and nowadays... it gets shelved as like, oh, this is what people who suck do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And like that is not me saying that. That is probably Focus saying that.
I mean, off the impression we're given, yeah.
Like it doesn't. I don't feel like I like that it's portrayed in a non-negative light in this episode, and I didn't think about the fact of how that ties in with like job sites and whatnot, but that's a really good point.
Well, yeah, because this is pre-internet,
right?
It's pre-mainstream internet.
No, I mean this is pre-internet. Capital I internet.
Yeah,
internets exist, but
it was very, very interesting to hear because like I've done some job hunting and. Yeah, I don't think I've ever stood in the line for anything. And then they were talking about, like, cross-referencing and going to the library and doing stuff like that. And I'm like, boy, Indeed just gives me a bunch of stuff that they know that other people want.
Yeah.
Like,
yep.
I'm sorry, Mr. Barclay.
I know. It's tough.
Not a sponsor.
But he talks to Whit then about, like, the fact that not working for all this time has given him this extra time to pray. He feels like he's getting his life straightened out.
Good.
It's been really hard on the family and on them financially, but like he can see the good in it. And it's laying the groundwork for what we'll see later in the episode.
Yeah.
Like going back through it, once you know where this is going, you can see him processing through this so that when it comes at the end of the episode, it hits you out of nowhere if you're Donna and Jimmy, but you can see that it's not coming out of nowhere for George, which is just good writing.
It's just great writing, honestly. It's so good. And the Whit dynamic is so good because Whit is not condescending. Whit is he's enabling. He's like, you're doing such a great job, and you've seemed like you've done so much good with a seemingly really bad situation, and like everybody's been talking about how helpful you've been, and all this stuff. And
it's so good.
This
I
is
like seeing
amazing Whit
adult relationships portrayed
Yeah.
like nicely.
Yeah, and like constructively that are like, I don't know. In all the ways that it could have gone different ways, I'm very happy that this is the dynamic we get this episode.
Yeah.
So then we end this scene by talking about George selling his second car.
Right.
So that's where
he's got to go home because he's selling off this car.
Yep, and they're going to be a one-car family, and we get this great transition to the carburetor dying or whatever.
Yeah, he knocked $75 off the sale for this carburetor that's going to cost the guy $30, so he's getting a good deal.
Yeah.
And then it's a really good interaction with the whole family. And
talking about the car being gone.
Right, and Donna is, like, distraught. And her dad's like, well, like,
I thought you were embarrassed.
You were embarrassed when I dropped this off. And he's like, when I dropped you off in that car. And she's like, well, yes, it's embarrassing, but like, I thought that was going to be my car.
Yeah.
And then there's a great back and forth with Jimmy going like, oh, no, it was going to be my car. And they're like back and forth for a while. And George is like, it doesn't matter. We don't have the car.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a fat mood. Honestly, did you never fought over cars with your siblings?
No. That was my parents' decision of like, we will not help you out at all with college because we don't think that is a necessary thing. However, we do think everyone needs a car, so we'll handle that.
Yeah, that's nice. No, my parents did the opposite. They were I bought my own car, and then my sister got her car for free, and it's like 5 years newer than my car. And I'm like, there's no way. There's no way. When I was getting my permit, and I was like, I need to get a car, I had a job, like, I paid cash for this thing, and then she just stumbles upon a free Toyota Prius. Are you kidding me? Oh, this scene hit home. This scene hit home.
And then, Jimmy just proclaims to the heavens, is this poverty or what?
Yeah,
and just like, no, Jimmy, you're
hardly. Dumb. No, you're being dumb.
Yeah.
They talk about selling the golf clubs.
Golf clubs. This is such an interesting crux for the episode.
Yeah.
Of like George is like, yeah, I'm gonna sell my golf clubs, and Jimmy's like, oh no, what's next? The stereo.
Yeah.
And then George and Mary go inside, and Jimmy stays outside with Donna and is like,
and has an existential crisis about
his dad is selling the golf clubs. Like, what's next? Like,
he just sold the car.
He's losing interest in golf, but Dad loves golf. Like, this not having a job is meaning like he's no longer interested in golf. We gotta fix this.
Yeah, this is all born out of returning his love for golf.
And so they're like, okay, well, we got a plan.
Yeah, we'll have a strategy session. Was it tonight at 11 or 10 or something like that?
So they meet in Donna's room after their parents have gone to bed.
We get the knock, quote,
because they're like, we got to do this when Mom and Dad don't know, because they know we never talk without fighting. Unless there's something wrong.
Yeah. And the best is when they start fighting in that scene. Their dynamic is real good.
It's so good.
It's so good. I mean, I feel like you're gonna hear that a lot. Chalk Squad. This arc is just they get along really beautifully in front of the mic as far as just creating this really fun dynamic.
Yeah.
And then, like we said, we cut to the Jimmy and Donna strategy session.
Right. And Jimmy's strategy is like, you remember that picture of Dad that looks real bad?
Yeah.
Let's just mail that to everyone and they'll give him a job out of pity.
Yeah, it's a poster child for famine.
Yeah. Donna's like, we can use the computer at the library to cross-reference all of Dad's skills. And Jimmy's like, what skills?
Yeah.
And I'm like, he's been doing handyman work around the town. Like, obviously he has skills. But then they get into this conversation, which feels so perfect, about not knowing what their dad's job was.
Oh my gosh, I feel that way so much. Like,
he's like, did he manage operations, or maybe he managed accounting?
My dad calls himself a glorified garbage man, which means it's really, really, really hard to explain what a man with his master's in international business is doing as a glorified garbage man. But yeah, no, this hit home very, very real for me, because every time my dad talks about his job, I'm like, you just do math all day, and I suck at math so much. How are you, my father? And that's the vibe I'm getting from this scene.
Yeah. It's so good. And then, right, Donna's like, okay, neither of those are good. Maybe we should just pray together. And Jimmy's like, well, I have been praying. And she's like, well, 2 or more gathered. Like, let's give this a shot.
Yeah.
And Jimmy just launches into wish fulfillment prayer.
Mm-hmm. Classic evangelical wish fulfillment prayer. I mean, not to throw a denomination on there, but
And then Donna starts a prayer that sounds like something I would pray.
Yeah, no, she's so mature. She really comes through, and then
they do such a good job of like distinguishing like Donna's age. Like, it's not like she is it's not like she has that big an advantage over Jimmy, but he is a child and she is like starting to grow up.
Yeah, they make it clear that she's like 2 developmental stages ahead of him, essentially. Yeah, like he is getting that this is real and it's important and it's becoming more of his own, but like he still feels like a kid figuring it out, whereas Donna's like, I'm going to be getting my driver's license. Like, she's like, what, probably 15, 16? Yeah. She's starting to talk like an adult. She's starting to talk like somebody who heard somebody else pray pretty well one time and was like, I'm going to pick up on that.
Yeah, pray pretty well. Thanks, Andrew.
Anytime.
Just there are clear parameters in which we must pray, and you will get a grade depending on your prayer.
I mean, that's what the Lord's Prayer is, right? It's the rubric? I don't know. They didn't make that very clear to me in Sunday school.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to cover that album and maybe it'll be clearer.
There's only one way to find out, and that's to keep listening.
I was thinking it too. So then we jump to a scene of Jimmy and Donna like walking into Wit's End, and it's just like good old Housemouth Wit being the best.
Oh gosh, yeah, it's so good. And so Jimmy's talking, like, Whit asks him about his day at work, and Jimmy fell asleep during a video about something and drooled all over his math homework.
Yep.
And today is as good as any day. Yeah, and then so we get this dynamic of where Whit is talking to Jimmy about stuff that's going on with his dad, and Jimmy's kind of catching Whit up, right? And then Whit is talking about God answering prayers in ways that we don't expect, and Jimmy's kind of like, well, like we prayed for it, and hopefully it goes well. And then
George kicks down the door.
Yeah, and then George just busts in. And he's like, hey, I went to the hardware store to pick up nails for the shed that they're building, and then because there's a sale, and they make that very clear this episode. Right. There's a sale at the hardware store.
Get some wobble wedges.
Yeah, and some fancy shed nails.
Maybe run into Erica Colburn.
Only if we're lucky.
So he ran into this guy at the hardware store who offered him essentially a new job at his old company.
Yeah.
Which
moved to Arkansas. Nah. I'd feel great.
Yeah.
Plot inconsistency.
Right. So he's going to move to Arkansas from Illinois, wherever Odyssey is, but he still ran into the guy at the hardware store.
Yes, of course. Naturally.
Unclear. So he's
So Whit in the scene before this was kind of like, Jimmy, don't get your hopes up, because Jimmy was talking about praying for these great jobs and everything. And then he ends the scene with, well, anything can happen, with God on your side. Like, obviously, don't count anything out. And then George busts in and gives him this great news about this new interview. And then the scene, I'm pretty sure, ends on Whit being like, well, I said anything could happen.
Yep, that is...
Wink at camera.
Uh-huh, it's great. And so they go to a scene of, like, Donna and Mary and Jimmy all talking in the kitchen and, like...
waiting for their dad to get home from the interview.
And being like, we can't all bombard him.
Yeah.
And
as nonchalant as possible. What's nonchalant?
And then they are very chalant.
Yeah, they're so chalant.
And they all just, like, overpower him all at once.
Well, the best thing is that he gets his job. The job that he got is accounting and operation management, which was the fake job that they thought that he had earlier.
Yeah. He's like, now, if I take this job, like, I wouldn't just oversee operations, I'd oversee operations and accounting. And Donna and Jimmy go like, it was operations before.
Yeah. It's so good.
And he goes down the list and he talks about, like, the fact that he'd have a company car, which was one of Jimmy's prayers.
And my favorite Switchfoot song. Not true, but, it's up there.
And, so George is like, they offered him the job. He's like, he doesn't know he doesn't know what he's going to do. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, did they offer you the job? And he's like, yeah, but I don't know if I should take it. And Jimmy's like, did Moses go for counsel before he crossed the Red Sea? Like, George is like, I'm going to go talk to the pastor. Like, I want to have... Yeah, I'm not... Like, keep praying. I don't know if this is what I am meant to do.
Yeah. And that's, like, really tough for the kids to hear. And so then...
it's really tough for them. And, like, Mary takes it well. Where you're like...
She knows more than...
Right.
The kids do.
She's been aware of the conversations going on.
Which is so cool as an audience to know that, like, the different ways that they're responding is based on stuff that's already been happening that we just don't get to see. Like, it would make so much sense that in this situation that the kids would not be as fully aware. I mean, especially with the, with the I want to say news drop, but with the breaking news of the future of the Barclay clan at the end of this episode, I mean, clearly stuff is happening. Whether that was intentional or not or whatever, like, they are... I really, really, really appreciate the Mary and George, like, married couple dynamic.
Yep.
The power seems like George is very much like... He understands that he should be in charge, like, should be, whatever. But like, he feels like he is the leader. But he is so quick to just be like, this is a team effort. I need to take time. We need to figure this out. Like, the decisions I make don't just affect me. They affect everybody. Like, he is a very just good man. And he understands other people's emotions very well.
Yeah,
which
he's navigating.
Might make him a good pastor. Who knows?
Right. And so, Donna and Jimmy then are talking with Whit, trying to process through this and just being like, it doesn't make any sense. Why wouldn't he take this? And, like, this is the perfect answer to our prayers. And Whit says, the obvious answer isn't always the right answer when it comes to our prayers.
Yeah. Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
I feel that.
Yeah, it's... I don't know. We've talked a lot over the time of doing this show about God's will because it comes up a lot. And, like, that's essentially, like, the theme of this episode.
Oh, yeah.
And it's an interesting, like, that... Because sometimes God's will is just moving forward and taking the opportunities as they come. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's making a change and taking the less traveled path.
Yeah.
And spending time in prayer and discernment and making those decisions to help guide that. which is very clearly what we have here.
Yeah.
Is like, the just because the path, like,
just because there's a supposed answer to prayer.
Right. Well, and from the information that Donna and Jimmy are operating on, I think it does make sense.
No, why wouldn't they take them?
To take it.
Yeah.
But the fact that we know that George has been going back and forth on this call to ministry in the background for a while now, it makes, like, you can then see how that has already been on his mind. So this doesn't just come out of the woodwork and go like, oh, this is clearly the answer to the prayer.
Yeah.
Because he is praying a different prayer.
Entirely.
Than what they are.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's a thing where, like, I don't know, we've talked about getting, like, stressed out over, like, what God's will is and whatnot. But I think what this episode is showing is not like, hey, like, here's a time where, like, it was, like, it was really hard to discern God's will. It feels like George knows what to do, but is still, like, it might even just be, like, he has been dragging his feet on the ministry thing from, like, just, like, on how to make it work.
Yeah, yeah.
And this, I mean, that's basically what he says. And, like, this was, like,
this was
the kick in the pants where he was like, this is the perfect opportunity for me, and it doesn't feel right.
Yep.
So that, like, settles it. What I've been thinking about is what I meant to do.
Yeah, and that's a really, really, really hard place to be in. Like, especially when you're, trying to find a new job. And, I mean, I can't even imagine having children and trying to navigate that situation. That makes it even harder because...
Well, and just the uncertainty in their future.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah.
The fact that, like, unless, like,
I'm
it's
sorry,
established
but
otherwise,
kids
but, like,
don't have a good time a lot of times.
Like, well, and Mary is not working, correct?
No, she is working.
Oh, she is.
So
okay.
Last episode we learned, so he loses his job, and then Donna and Jimmy and Mary all get jobs.
That's right.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. I do remember that. Good call.
Yeah, and so they're basically selling stuff to keep
make up the difference.
Yeah,
but they do. It isn't just like no one in the family is working.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. That makes sense.
They aren't destitute, and they've done they did a good job with that. And then, so basically, the next scene is Donna and Jimmy coming home. And finding their parents in the living room crying.
Right.
And what is, Jimmy asked them why they're sad. Yeah. And he's like, well, they're not, the mom says, oh, they're not sad tears. And Jimmy's like, well, it looks hysterical.
Yeah.
But this is how they segue into he turned down the job.
Yeah. Well, and like, I get that too, of like the emotion and the weight of the decision being what breaks you and not like something sad happening.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. In that situation where it's like, I can't even imagine. I don't know how long he was working at the job where he was before, but we know that Donna was presumably, 15 or 16, and he's been working there presumably their entire life. Like, we'll just say that's a safe. He's been working there for, we'll say 20 years.
Right.
Like, that's 20 years of your life that you've built around doing a certain thing. He's probably 40. Like, this is probably the job that he went to school for, and now what we learned in the scene is he's going to go into the ministry, he's going to go into seminary, and he's going to become a pastor. And those are huge differences.
Yep.
Like, he already went to school. He probably thought for 20 years that he was never going to have to go back to school. Or if he did, it was going to be, related to
like
business
a
or
degree
accounting or whatever.
Right. Like, yeah.
This is seminary, which is entirely different. And, like, I'd be crying too. I probably wouldn't be able to speak coherently in that state. And,
And he's just
But he's so vulnerable. He's like, it's been this long process of deciding, and like it's really difficult. And the kids respond immediately, like obviously very negatively. Like they're like, why? We don't know how to be pastors' kids. Like why would we go along with this? Like why are you doing this? You were given even better than what we had before. Like company car, raise, everything that we could have hoped for. Because again, so that is the other perk of the previous episode was they spent like the first half of Our Daily Bread building up to like how excited they were for him to have more money.
Mm-hmm.
And then they basically like dashed that all to pieces. And so now here it's like, oh my gosh, he's actually, they sacrificed, they sold their car, they did everything that they needed to. Now they can get back up on their feet.
Right.
And he's saying, no, well, we're going to get on our feet, but it's just going to look entirely different than what we thought. And that's tough.
Yeah. It really is.
We prayed for you to get a job, not this.
Right.
As I believe Donna or Jimmy or somebody.
I think Jimmy says that it might be Donna.
Yeah.
Regardless. Jimmy has the what they either Mary or George asks like if they're surprised, and Jimmy's like, or if they're I think someone says like I know this is coming as a shock, and Jimmy says, how about a 1,000,000,000,000 shock? Am I glowing yet?
Yeah, that was funny. Jimmy is hilarious. I gotta
good.
say. I mean, yeah.
This might be where Andrew's sense of humor came from.
Which is probably why we're such good friends, because I thought to myself, wow, it sounds a lot like Dylan.
And so yeah, he's gonna look for part-time work. He reveals like he's been processing through this for months, like basically from the time he lost his job. Like this has been presented and is like the thing he's been wrestling with. And yeah, having the chance to go back to where he was really solidified that he needs to go in a different direction.
Yeah.
And he's gonna find part-time work, and go to seminary.
Yeah. And so
Donna and Jimmy exit the scene.
Well, yeah, Donna and Jimmy exit the scene, and then Mary's like tries to say something or whatever,
like,
and
is it time to say something?
Yeah. And then George is like, no, one thing at a time. Let's wait.
Yep.
And so then we get Donna and Jimmy and Whit at Whit's End. And again, just, round of applause for John Avery Whitaker being a good person and doing a great job this episode, just talking these kids through their emotions and just killing it.
Yeah, and, having input and, like...
Not being condescending.
Directing them. Not being condescending. Not having more information from them and withholding them so that they, think that they're gonna die.
Yeah. That's pretty tough.
Like just good wit stuff.
Yeah, good wit stuff. Not intentionally, terrifying children, traumatizing them.
And so, yeah, he's.
So he talks about he'll become a dad. He's just my dad, and then he says, "Oh, well, he'll become a dad to a lot of people." And they kind of talk about the difference of like what does it actually mean to be a pastor, and like how is that going to make things different for you guys and your family dynamic. And Whit's like, your whole family is in a lot of change, and just by him saying that, like, that is counseling 101 as far as like that's what you should say in the moment. You affirm everything that they're going through, and you just be like, yeah, stuff is different now than it was before, and that is hard. Full stop. Like, I'm sorry. And then you can, move on through that, but this is so, like, such a good... And then he redeems it by saying that God is involved in these changes, and that God is manipulating, not necessarily manipulating, but God is... We see that there's a lot of change happening, but we can trust in the fact that God is involved in these changes, and if God is good, therefore these changes can be good.
Yeah.
And to which I said, in all caps, such a good wit episode, he's my wit, yas. So, there you go.
Yeah.
If that's what you want.
And I think also, like, this is a great scene of seeing, like, where Donna's at versus Jimmy.
Mm-hmm.
Of, like, she's handling it with so much maturity as, like, the older sister who is older.
Yeah,
obviously.
Just like, bigger brain.
Yeah, but also, like, the classic, like, you know, girls mature more quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it doesn't feel like there's a huge gap in age between her and Jimmy, but there is, like, a gap in experience and just, like, what they're able to process and deal with in a way that feels really real. And, like, I just really like it.
It's so good.
And then, Wit says, like, this, you know, this change is going to require sacrifice. Like, this isn't going to be easy for any of you, but, like, it will be good. And as they're going out, kind of quietly to himself says the best is yet to come.
Yeah.
Which is so good.
Yeah. And the thing is like, so that is the Wit that is a human that believes that God is going to do something beautiful in the situation, and not Wit being God and already knowing what was going to happen.
Right.
That's so good. It's so good.
And that line strikes twice as hard, at least if you've listened to the show a bunch, because when they do the Gone episode, they reuse that audio.
Yeah.
Because that is an episode after Hal Smith's death, where they are pulling a bunch of lines from elsewhere in the show to try and, like, set things up. And so that becomes, like, the line that Hal Smith's Wit goes out on.
Yeah. The best is yet to come.
Yeah.
And we get Paul Hurlinger, which is great Wit.
Yeah.
He does an awesome job. I mean,
yeah.
Such a good... Okay. So then we get the final scene of this episode. And before we get into it, I would like to talk about something that Dylan did not pick up on. But in every scene that involves the whole family, it sounds like there's a turn signal on in the background.
Yeah.
I can't get my head around it.
Andrew is listening, streaming through the Odyssey Adventure Club with good headphones.
Yeah.
I was playing a downloaded file off my phone speaker in mono.
Yeah.
So, like, it might be, like, there's a good chance I just didn't notice it.
I was like, what is it? It sounds with the pace and repetition of a turn signal, but they're never in a car, which means it's either an accidental thing, or it's supposed to be some very strange ambient noise that I cannot figure out. Like, is it a
clock?
Yeah. No, I don't think so.
Turn signals and clocks don't sound the same.
No, not even... That. I mean, it could be.
Yeah.
I'd be willing to...
I wish I had something to add to that, but I just
If you've listened to this episode, if you have the club and you hear it too, please message me at least.
Yeah. And so...
Let me know I'm not crazy.
This scene begins with Donna apologizing for her and Jimmy's reaction to things.
Yeah.
Which so good.
So good. Being honest to your parents and being like, you're a person and I did a thing and it was bad to you and I'm sorry.
Right. And, like, we were just kind of, like, freaking out at the moment. But, like, yeah, this is, like, now that we've had some time to process, like, we're kind of sorry for that.
Yeah.
That reaction. Yeah, it's good.
We know it's a lot of change, Dad, but we're ready for it. Is the line that's given.
Are you ready for a little bit more change?
Yeah.
Because here comes your new sibling, because your mom is pregnant.
Boom.
And that's where we at.
Probably ill-advised.
What?
As far as family planning is concerned.
Oh, well, yes. I think that is... Right. I think that's part of... You can read that as part of the thing that they've been struggling with during this whole time, is, like, we're going to have an additional financial burden.
Yeah.
Like, is now the right time to be going into ministry? And, like, it is.
I mean, if it's what the big man says, he's not wrong.
Yeah.
So
it is, that kind of sets us off on what will be a fun saga.
I completely forgot when I was, like, getting ready to listen to this episode. I completely forgot that Mary was pregnant too.
Yeah. So when George said, or when they had that conversation about, like, we got something else, did you know it at that point? No. You were just like, I don't know what the other reveal is going to be.
No, I was just like, one thing at a time. Good job. Way to 1, I was like, wow, you really shut down your wife there. 2, I was like,
yeah,
okay.
I did think about that too. It's fine.
But
I guess.
No. Hey, I mean, as far as the kids being better to receive it, this is definitely the better time than previously. So
yeah.
That being said, that's the end of the episode.
That is the end of the episode. I like it. It's good. I am excited for this
saga
thing that we're going
arc.
Through. It's gonna be really fun covering these episodes. Yeah.
We love the family dynamic. Great humor, great writing, great. Hopefully we get more Hal Smith wit. I probably don't, but I'm excited. I'm excited to see how they tie up the end of this character, because I know for a fact that, as we talked about before, this is one of the few characters that they actually wrote off the show, and
whole family.
Yeah, it's a whole family that they wrote off the show, and they're a very important family to me, but I don't quite remember super well how they went about doing that. So it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Thank y'all for listening.
Yeah. You have anything you want to plug? Yeah, I don't either. And we will be back in a week to talk about episode 264, Making the Grade.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
WadFam Chalk Pod is a presentation of the Lidditz Podcast Co-op. This show is a fan podcast and has no official affiliation with Adventures in Odyssey or Focus on the Family. As such, the copyright is ours under Creative Commons. Follow the podcast at WadFamChalkPod on Twitter and Instagram, or email us at wadfamchalkpod@gmail.com. A Prayer for George Barclay was hosted by Dylan Weaver and Andrew Sabo, and edited by Dylan Weaver. And I'm Nathan Haverstick, hoping you'll join us again next time for more of the WadFam Chalk Pod.